In this lesson, you'll learn to identify various sampling techniques and recognize a biased sample. Why is sampling important in manufacturing? Manufacturing music CDs involves burning or recording copies from a master. However, not every burn is successful. It is costly and time-consuming to check every CD that is burned. Therefore, in order to monitor production, some CDs are picked at random and checked for defects. When you wish to make an investigation, there are 4 ways that you can collect data. Look at published data. Use data that are already in a source like a newspaper or book. Observational study. Watch naturally occurring events and record the results. Experiment. Conduct an experiment and record the results. Survey. Ask questions of a group of people and record the results. When performing an experiment or taking a survey, researchers often choose a sample. A sample is some portion of a larger group, called a population, selected to represent that group. If all the units within a population are included, it is called a census. Sample data are often used to estimate a characteristic within the entire population, such as voting preferences prior to elections. If the population is all the light bulbs manufactured on a production line, a sample could consist of 24 light bulbs selected from the production line. If the population is all the water in a swimming pool, you could test 1 tube of water in the pool. If the population is all the people in the United States, 1,509 people from throughout the United States could be sampled. A random sample of a population is selected so that it is representative of the entire population. The sample is chosen without any preference. There are several ways to pick a random sample. A simple random sample is a sample that is likely to be chosen as any other from the population. The 26 students in a class are assigned a different number from 1 to 26, then 3 of the 26 numbers are picked at random. In a stratified random sample, the population is first divided into similar non-overlapping groups. A simple random sample is then selected from each group. The students in a school are divided into freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Then 2 students are randomly selected from each group of students. In a systematic random sample, the items are selected according to a specified time or item interval. Every 2 minutes an item is pulled off the assembly line, or every 20th item is pulled off of the assembly line. Each day, a department store chain selects 1 male and 1 female shopper randomly from each of their 57 stores and asks them survey questions about their shopping habits. Identify the sample and suggest a population from which it was selected. So the department store is selecting 1 male and 1 female shopper from each of their 57 stores. And they said they're doing it every day. So that's who they were sampling out of the entire population, which would be all of the shoppers in the chain stores. So they picked male and female, so this would be a stratified random sample because they categorized them by male or female first. At an automobile factory, every 10th item is checked for quality controls. First, they ask us to identify the sample and suggest a population from which it was selected. He said the sample was every 10th item, and that sample was taken out of all of the products manufactured in the factory. And then since it's every 10th, it is definitely a systematic random sample. Well, random samples are unbiased. In a biased sample, 1 or more parts of the population are favored over others. Truly random samples are unbiased. In a biased sample, 1 or more parts of a population are favored over others. The Student Council surveys the students in 1 classroom to decide the theme for the spring dance. Identify the sample as biased or unbiased. Explain your reasoning. It's biased. Only 1 classroom was surveyed. The Parent Association surveys the parents of every 5th student on the school roster to decide whether to hold a fundraiser. Identify the sample as biased or unbiased. Explain your reasoning. This time we're going to be unbiased because they used a systematic method. A local news station interviews 1 person on every street in Los Angeles to give their opinion of the mayor. This would be considered unbiased because they use a stratified method. A statistics company calls every 20th person in Cleveland's telephone directory to find out his or her favorite sports team in Ohio. This is doubly biased because, first of all, they only surveyed Cleveland, asking about all of Ohio, and even if they only wanted to know about Cleveland, if you go to the telephone directory, you're leaving out everyone who is not listed in the phone book. Of biased samples, the two most common are convenience and voluntary response. A convenience sample includes members of a population that are easily accessed. For example, to check spoilage, a produce worker selects 10 apples from the top of the bin. The 10 apples are unlikely to represent all of the apples in the bin. A voluntary response sample involves only those who want to participate in the sampling. A radio call-in show records that 75% of its 40 callers voiced negative opinions about a local football team. Those 40 callers are unlikely to represent the entire local population. Volunteer callers are more likely to have strong opinions and are typically more negative than the entire population. The maintenance chairperson of a neighborhood association has been asked by the association to survey the residents of the neighborhood to find out when to hold a neighborhood cleanup day. The chairperson decides to ask her immediate neighbors and the neighbors in the houses directly across the street from her house. Identify the sample and suggest a population from which it was selected. The sample is the chairperson's neighbors. The population of interest is the entire neighborhood. If we had to classify this as convenience or voluntary response, it is definitely convenience because she asked her neighbors. Mark, a college journalist, wanted to find out what the average student in the United States does on the weekend. He decided to interview the people in his dorm. Well, the sample he took is the students in his dorm. Out of the population he was supposed to be serving is all college students. So this is definitely another example of convenience. The High School Parent Association sent a letter to the parents of all graduating seniors asking them to return the enclosed ballot if they had a preference on where the graduation party was to be held. The sample is parents of graduating seniors. The population they're trying to get information from is all parents of graduating seniors. And unfortunately, the sample is going to be biased because it is a voluntary response sample. You'd be shocked to know that not everyone responds to surveys. A large company wants to make sure that all of their employees are working their scheduled hours. The accountant states that the first 50 people to voluntarily submit their time cards will be reviewed for accuracy. The sample is the first 50 workers. The population is all of the workers. And it's going to be biased because it's voluntary response. Somehow I think the first 50 workers may be different than the last 50. Choose to volunteer to have their time cards checked. Simple random, stratified random, and systematic random samples are all types of unbiased or random samples. Convenience sample and voluntary response sample are types of biased samples.